Hey guys, I'm Dylan Johnson, class of 2021, and yeah, I'm here to talk to you guys about your externship program. I ended up doing my summer externship at a private practice at Nittany Eye Associates in State College, Pennsylvania. It was a brand new site, so a little daunting that way for a new SCO student to go there. But luckily, that site actually had been an old externship site for some Salus externs. So definitely was well established. They already knew what to do with the externs and everything else. The docs all there were all Salus except for one of the docs who was from Houston. So it was interesting to be able to see the different teaching styles and everything else like that. So when I got up to State College and started at Nittany Eye Associates, we met with the extern coordinator, and she kind of just talked us through what the game plan was. The first week, she ended up having us do was just shadow the technicians, learn how to run the technology, learn how to do charting, learn how to work up patients in case you ever needed to do that. And then after that first week or so, you start to be able to shadow with the doctors as they're seeing the patients. You would go in, see the patient, and then the doctor would follow behind and would edit your chart as needed. And then as my externship went on, then it got to a point where I would go in before the doctors, I would finish off the chart, and they would just come in, check a few things, and edit a few things, and send the patient on his or her way. It was a really great experience. I learned a lot. The externship there was a lot of residency trained doctors like ocular disease, cornea contact lens, low vision, vision therapy, and just learned a lot. It was also really nice. There was another SEO extern there, but then also a Salus extern as well. So being able to be with them, bounce ideas off with them, and we also had to do PowerPoints every 2 weeks at that extern. So on a certain case that you saw throughout those 2 weeks, you had to present the case and then find some research on the specific condition that the patient had. I love living in State College. I ended up living in an Airbnb. I really cheaped out on my Airbnb and ended up only paying about $500. But funny story, I ended up having a squirrel and a bat in my Airbnb, and it was not a fun situation. So I definitely learned my lesson about paying that extra buck for better quality. It was livable, don't get me wrong, but definitely not something I ever want to live through again. So highly recommend, when you're looking at your locations to live, definitely make sure to kind of pay attention, check the reviews, and kind of do a little more searching if you can. And then my fall rotation was at Ben & Bloom Eye Centers in Louisville, Kentucky. This was my institutional site. It is an OD-MD practice. So at the practice, they have retinal ophthalmologists. They also have cataract surgeons and glaucoma surgeons and everything else. But then the optometrists also manage like severe cases of glaucoma. And being that Kentucky is in a full scope state, the optometrists do surgical minor surgical procedures, do some laser procedures that you're able to shadow. I love this site. It was amazing. It was definitely a different experience than what I had at Nittany Eye Associates. When you got to Ben & Bloom, you ended up having just an orientation with the practice manager, kind of talking to you about where the locations are and everything else. And but then after that, you kind of just got plunged right in. You ended up getting assigned to a doctor each day. So you never really knew who you were with, and you just introduced yourself when you got there, and it was almost like a shadowing opportunity in a way. Don't get me wrong, you definitely were able to learn a ton by doing it that way, but the doctors always signed off on the charts, edited the charts, yeah, you just were in there just to see as much disease and learn as much as you can. Yeah, the one thing that I really enjoyed about this externship was Dr. Bloom, one of the retinal ophthalmologists at Benedict Bloom. He would go through PowerPoints that he assembled over the years and take time out his day on Monday to just lecture us externs on certain cases like diabetes and how to interpret OCTs and stuff like that, or even understand the different layers of an OCT scan, which I found was super beneficial and helpful, and helped out with the learning process with the externship. In Louisville, I ended up paying a little bit extra for my Airbnb, and it definitely was worth it. I ended up paying about $1,200 a month for my Airbnb, but it was really, really nice. It was kind of like a studio apartment kind of thing, and it was close to downtown in the Bardstown Road area, Highlands area of Louisville, and I really enjoyed it because it was close enough to downtown, but it was far enough out of downtown that I didn't have to do too much of that downtown driving or worry about parking and everything else. So at my Airbnb, I would go biking across Ohio River all the time. There were a few breweries around that I'd be able to go check out and taste. And yeah, being on externs is a great time, guys. Definitely take the opportunity to be able to explore your surroundings, learn about the area as well. When I was up in State College, I definitely enjoyed being able to experience that Penn State experience, where like going to the creamery for ice cream, or going to the corner for cinnamon buns. But then also too, I made the effort to go elsewhere since I've never been in the Northeast. I went and checked out Washington, D.C. for a weekend, or I drove to Philly or Pittsburgh, and it was just one of those cool experiences that I probably wouldn't have ever went there in my life had I not just been living in State College. And same in Louisville too. While I was there, I did more so the bourbon trail and bourbon tasting, checking out Lexington and the different horse race tracks that Kentucky has to offer. All in all, just a great experience. Make the most of it, learn the most you can, and have a good time, guys.
Hi, this is Sami Lee from the class of 2021. I'm just going to share a couple insights about my externship experience and hopefully on how to make the most out of yours. So my first rotation was at Millen Eye Center. It was my institutional rotation in the fall, and this was an OD-MD practice north of Atlanta. The practice had 6 locations, about 9 MDs and 11 ODs total. I was mainly at one location, the Cumming location, which had about 2 to 3 ODs and maybe 2 or 3 MDs at that location regularly. I was the only student on rotation there at the time. Sometimes there was 1 or 2 other students from other schools. I just happened to be the only one at that time. And the main OD that I worked with as my preceptor was Dr. Fico. Overall, it was a very fast-paced environment, and the patients would get worked up to dilation by technicians, so that was really nice to be able to go into the exam room and get to focus on the ASEG and the PSEG when I would go in to see the patients. So I would see the patients before Dr. Fico, and then I would report to him, give him my thoughts on what was going on or what I would do as the treatment, and then we would discuss on things that he agreed or disagreed. And then he would also come in and take a look at the patients and wrap up the encounter. Overall, there was a lot of cataract and refractive surgery post-ops, a lot of medical comprehensives and some add-ons. So making the most out of your institutional experience, some things I learned was to not be afraid about asking questions because you're there to learn. Dr. Figo was a very good teacher, and he was always open to any of my questions that I had, and also to be confident. I know it's kind of intimidating in the beginning, but to give your tentative treatment plan as if you're the doctor, and then to discuss that with your preceptor and learn from it. It's okay to be wrong, or to take your best guess, but also to learn about different approaches that each doctor may have, because there may not always be one right answer. I also learned to ask for opportunities. I got to shadow the MDs a couple of times in the clinic, or see them in OR, and I also got to work with another OD in the practice sometimes if Dr. Fico wasn't around. So overall, my preceptor was very flexible and was open to have me shadow any MDs or see anything that I wanted to while I was there. Another thing I learned was to make sure you look at the whole patient history and chart before you go in, especially if your patients get worked up by techs. It's important to look at their medical conditions, the medications they're taking, to give you the full picture of a patient. And then my spring rotation, I was at a private practice. It was called North Range Eye Care in Commerce City, Colorado, which is a suburb outside of Denver. This was a private practice that was opened by an SCO alum, Dr. Haidt, in 2013, and he opened this practice cold. He has one other doctor that works with him in the practice, so it's not too large. And as a student extern, I got to have my own schedule of patients, which was pretty nice. I got to go through the full exam, and then I would just check out with Dr. Haidt at the end. Overall, it was a pretty typical private practice with primary care, soft contact lenses, a couple of medical exam sprinkles in there. Overall, gave me a good feel for what private practice is like. Some insights I have about making the most out of your private practice rotation would be to start thinking like a doctor. Dr. Haidt definitely challenged me on that a lot, to be confident and to think about my treatment plan as if I was out practicing on my own, instead of relying always on a preceptor or knowing that there's someone that's going to call the shots or for you to fall back on. Because in reality, I was gonna I'm gonna be an OD in a couple of months, and so just remembering that and trying to come to clinical decisions independently and on my own. Overall, I also learned to solve a patient's complaint, and to listen well to a patient and make sure you address why they came in. Overall, if they leave and they feel like you didn't address any of their problems that they came in with, they're going to go elsewhere. Another insight, same thing, is to ask questions. Overall, at this rotation, since it was a private practice and Dr. Haidt opened his practice cold, there were a lot of opportunities to ask about practice management, get insight about how he opened his practice cold and how he runs his business. So definitely, if you're interested in owning your practice, getting that insight from your preceptor while you're at your rotation is great. And then lastly, another thing I learned was to take the different things that you learn from each rotation, different styles of clinical practice, find out the things that you like, things that you've seen done well, and kind of incorporate that into your own how you practice. But then also you can also take things that you've seen that you don't really like, how either someone phrases something or how they do something, and you don't have to do that when you're practicing out on your own. So kind of learning the things that you've seen done well and not done well, and mixing and matching that when you get to practice on your own. And then lastly, just enjoy the time that you have outside of clinic and explore. I had family in Atlanta. It's fortunate I got to live with them and spend a lot of quality time with them. In Colorado, I found my housing through like a travel nurse page, Facebook page. So I've had a lot of friends that either found their housing with like Furnish Finder or Airbnb. When I was in Colorado, I got to explore a lot of the Rockies with like skiing and hiking. So definitely do your research on where to live. Try not to commute super long, but also get to enjoy, getting to explore and have adventures in new places. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Tess Osborne. I'm from the class of 2021 and I'm just going to tell you about my externship experience this year. My summer rotation was at Becker & Associates. It was in Belleville, Illinois. I've listed my pros and cons here for you to read over. There were kind of more cons than pros for this site, but you always have to be able to find the positive when you're out and about doing these things. While I was working in Belleville, I lived in St. Louis, Missouri. It was about a 30 to 40 minute commute, depending on traffic. I stayed with family, so it was a lot of fun, and I got to spend time with them, and even though COVID was happening, we still found lots of things to do and kept ourselves entertained. My second rotation was at Eye Specialists of Mid-Florida. I worked mostly with Dr. Benson, that is the female doctor. I also worked with Dr. Attaway and Dr. Dixon there. You kind of rotate between offices for this one. Again, I listed the pros and cons. A lot of pros here. I actually had a hard time coming up with some of the cons. It was a really wonderful experience and all the doctors are very supportive. I was primarily at the Haines City location, which was about 15 minutes from where I was living. I got along really well with the staff, and that's where I worked with Dr. Benson primarily. So living in Florida for this last rotation was a little tricky because you're in this place called Four Corners. It's 4 different cities: Davenport, Kissimmee, Haines City, and Champions Gate. I was working primarily in Haines City, so I lived in Davenport, which is very close. But every now and again I had to go to Winter Haven, which is about a 45-minute commute. It wasn't too bad. I didn't mind it. I could have lived in Winter Haven because you go to Haines City and the Winter Haven office no matter where you live. It just worked out for me that living in Davenport close to Haines City worked out, and I just did the commute twice a week. I also found an Airbnb online because there weren't a ton of living options. It ended up being in an old person living community. It was a lot of fun. I have some pictures of the friends I made there and a picture of my little trailer. They called it cottage, but call it what it is. There isn't a lot to do in that town. I found one of 2 gyms that I really enjoyed, and then I had to drive if I wanted to go anywhere out to dinner to do anything. I was 30 minutes from Orlando, 1 hour from Tampa, and an hour and a half from Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach, so that was a fun little weekend getaway. My dog really loved it, as you can tell in the picture there as well. And being in Florida, there's a lot to do. I went to Epcot, so Disney World, and Universal with family that came and visited me. With COVID, it was, a little risky, but both organizations or places had really wonderful COVID setups. It felt very safe. You were outside the whole time, and it was just a lot of fun, a really wonderful experience.
Hey everybody, it's Lauren Watson. I know a lot of you. Today I'm going to be talking about my externship experience. I made a little PowerPoint and I'm going to go through it, but I might just talk a little bit at the end. So it's just called, making the most of your externship. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about mine. I was at SCO over the summer, so that you all kind of, have an idea of what that's going to entail. But I want to talk about my external rotation. So Louisiana Family Eye Care was my first rotation in the fall. So I went there after my summer rotation. It's in Covington, Louisiana, which is north of New Orleans, and it's a private practice rotation, and they use Vision Source. So this is me in a fun Halloween mask, but this is the building and the 2 doctors that I primarily worked with at Louisiana Family Eye Care. On the left down there is Dr. Jeff and Dr. Amy. They go by their first names in the practice, so no one calls him Dr. Anastasio or Dr. Puerto. They say Dr. Jeff, Dr. Amy. This practice was amazing. these two doctors are amazing. So I can't wait to kind of tell you a little bit more about it. But first I want to tell you about kind of where I lived and like how the logistics and everything works. So I lived actually, this is a huge river on the left-hand side, or a huge lake over here. On the bottom of the lake is New Orleans. On the top of the lake is where Covington is. It's huge. So I actually lived on the New Orleans side down here. So I had a very long commute every day. It was about 40 minutes, and there wasn't really any traffic, but it was about 40 minutes every day. And I chose to do that. I knew I was going to be doing that but I wanted to live closer to New Orleans. There wasn't much in the suburb of Covington, and I just knew I'd be super, super bored there. So I lived in Metairie, and I rented an Airbnb. It was actually a 2-bed, 1-bath Airbnb, and I got it for like $900 a month that I was paying there. It was really great because I could just take all my belongings down there, but I didn't have to worry about furniture, or, you know, silverware and plates and kitchenware and stuff like that. So it was really, really great to just like move in and move out when I needed to. Highly recommend Airbnb if you're going to be, you know, if you don't have another option. But anyway, yes, I commuted over this lake every day. It was great. Wouldn't necessarily recommend a 40-minute commute. This one was good because it was so pretty. As you can kind of see on the right, that's what you would see when you were driving across it. But a 40-minute commute's a lot every single day. So you might want to think about that when you're thinking about a place to live near your externship. You know, you got to balance, you know, would you rather, you know, if your site's kind of in a suburb, but you kind of want to live in the city, which is more important to you, the commute or, you know, kind of being close to everything. So that's that. Let's see. Here are just some pictures of things that I did while I was in New Orleans. Some friends came to visit. That's me and my cousin on the left-hand side, kayaking there. And then my boyfriend and I on Bourbon Street, getting oysters and things with my friend Christy. So, you know, New Orleans is a great place to be, and I highly recommend taking advantage of the city or area that you're in when you go out to these places. It's not often that people get to explore a city without commitment. So the 4 months I spent there was really, really exciting. I had to evacuate a lot for hurricanes, and lost power for like a couple days and Wi-Fi for 2 weeks, but everything's all right. Louisiana Family Eye Care was, you know, a great practice, so I'm happy that I went. So here are some pros and some cons of Louisiana Family Eye Care. Honestly, cons were really hard for me to come up with. I absolutely loved my time here, and I was sad to go. Scope of practice. Louisiana, as many of you know, has like the best scope of practice out of any state. So we were doing lumps and bumps there. We were doing SLTs, YAGs. You know, we could write pretty much any prescription. So it was really great to see full scope optometry, you know, in a private practice, like what it could truly be. You know, we might be going from, you know, a couple regular exams to doing a YAG in the next room and then running back to do, you know, like excise someone's xanthelasma, you know, all of it. It's really, really cool. Injections, things like that. So that's really exciting. The number of exams, I got to see, you know, 12 to 15 people a day there. They were scheduled every 20 minutes. So it was good I was getting good at my efficiency. And going along with that, the techs were so knowledgeable and just so efficient that it was great. You know, they would dilate them, they would do all the preliminary testing, and then I would go in and like be the doctor. And the staff is amazing. They're all amazing. The opticians, the insurance people, you know, it was really, really great to spend that time with them. The doctors, Dr. Amy, Dr. Jeff, so knowledgeable, just have so many years of care under their belt. I always felt like they were challenging me, but they weren't making it miserable. You know, they wanted me to learn, but not feel scared to talk to them. No teching. I was always doing the doctor thing. Being next to New Orleans was really great, and living in that city. And then at this practice, since it was private practice, I got a lot of anterior segment, you know, care. A lot of red eyes, a lot of herpes. I've seen, you know, so much herpes in the eye at this point. So it was a really great practice for trying to figure out, okay, like what is this redness? Do I need to put a steroid on this? What do I need to do? So it was really great. I enjoyed it wholeheartedly. Cons. Not a lot of posterior segment disease, but I knew that going in. I knew I was going to get my post-seg at a different rotation. So that's really okay, but it is a con if you were looking for that. And they have specialty contact lenses there and they do them, but the techs are so knowledgeable that a lot of the times they do the fits like kind of themselves, and then the doctor comes in and checks it. So I didn't really get that like front to back kind of experience with that, but I'm not super interested in it, so it's okay. But it would have been really cool to at least, you know, do that there. My next rotation was the Baltimore VA. That's where I'm at right now. I'm about to finish that up in about 2 weeks. So it's in Baltimore, Maryland, of course, where I'm from. So it was nice to come home. This is a picture of the building. There's 3 locations. So there's the downtown location, which is seen in the picture. There's a Loch Raven location about 15 minutes away. And then about 20 minutes away from Baltimore, 25 minutes away, there's a Glen Burnie location. So you will have to travel. Here are some pictures of the lovely doctors here at Baltimore. The one on the bottom left is Dr. Laposa. He runs the student program. Dr. Ortega is on the top left. He runs the residency program. And the other 3 are attending doctors there. So the Baltimore VA, so many pros, cons as well. Pros, so much disease, so much glaucoma. Glaucoma. People come to the Baltimore VA if they want to get good at disease and good at glaucoma. And I know why. I mean, I've only been here for 4 months and I feel like I have learned exponentially more about glaucoma than I have at all at SCO. Not that it was bad teaching, it's just you can't, you know, you see it every day, all day here. So you'll really get good at that. And I feel a lot more comfortable with glaucoma. The doctors have so much combined experience. You know, Dr. Ballinger, the one in the picture, the picture here, he's the one in the middle. He has been at the Baltimore VA, I think, for his entire career, and he was involved in the ARED study. So he's been there for a long time, and a lot of the doctors did their residency here and then stayed because they loved it so much. There's other residents and students at this location, which I didn't have in my private practice. I was the only one. And it's really great to just bounce ideas off of and, you know, have people to hang out with outside of clinic. Didactic activities, it's nice that you're institutional. You'll have journal clubs. You might have, you know, presentations to do and things. So it kind of builds you up there. And just Baltimore. I love Baltimore and I missed being here. So I think that's a pro. Cons, it can be hectic. The VA can be very hectic and daunting. You're expected to know a lot, and if you don't know it, you need to figure it out. I mean, they're not mean, but they have a lot high expectations of you. 3 locations. Kind of sucks to have to, you know, be at 3 different places all the time, but I kind of like it because it, you know, changes the pace a little bit and you get a little bit of everything. So I'm just going to end this video by saying what I've learned. You're learning more than you think. You know, it can be a lot of pressure, especially here at this last rotation at the VA. I feel like, you know, I know so much more, but I don't know anything at the same time. So just understand that you're still a student, even though you're going to be graduating in less than a year. You know, will learn the tools and techniques that you need to succeed. If you think you should perform a test or do something, do it. Run the test, as long as that's okay with them, which it normally is. You know, there have been so many times where I'm like, you know what, I should probably get that MAC OCT, and then I don't get it, and the doctor's like, yeah, we should probably get a MAC OCT, and I'm like, I wish I could have just been proactive and have done that. So, you know, try to be proactive. If you think you need to trial frame someone, trial frame them. You know, you are the doctor at this point, so, you know, try to think like a doctor. That'll get some taking used to, especially if your first rotation is SCO, but just do what you think is necessary. Take advantage of asking questions. These doctors are so knowledgeable most of the time. So ask questions, you know, ask about different presentations of things, you know, because not every person's going to present the same. One of the things that I really, really loved, and I started doing, especially at the VA, is writing down my daily takeaways in a notebook. there's always like some tidbits that I take away from each case. I might not get everything about a case, but I'll take away a couple things. So, if whatever the case may be, I'll go ahead and just write down every day, okay, number 1, number 2, number 3, like what are the things that I want to remember from this day? So I can come back to that later and kind of study it and remember and things like that. I find that to be very helpful when you're kind of throwing so much information all the time. Have a collection of interesting cases. You're going to have to write case reports for your external rotations. And it's just easy if you have like a stockpile of cases that you think about from. They can be contact lenses, they can be ASEC, they can be whatever, but it's always good to have kind of like maybe write down the chart number, like write down something to remind yourself, so you can go back and look at that patient and get their information, because you're going to have to do those. And at a lot of your institutional sites, you're probably going to have to do presentations, and so you can do a presentation from your other rotations as long as you have the information. So definitely have a collection of those. Knock on every exam room door before you enter. This is just good practice. I learned this at the VA. Knock on every exam room door. You never know what you're going to find, especially in a VA. There's a lot of old people there who have a lot of things going on, and they might be laying out on the floor or peeing in a sink or something like that when you walk in. So knock on every exam room door. The commute is important. Like I said, I decided to live downtown here in Baltimore, so I'm about 12-13 minutes away from 2 of the locations, the ones that are more in Baltimore, which is really great. I could have lived with my parents, but it would have been about a 30-minute commute at least. But in Louisiana, I decided to deal with the extra commute because I wanted to live in New Orleans. So think about that when you're getting your housing situated. And try to update your patient logs at least twice a week, especially at those private practices where you're seeing a lot of patients. It can be, you can get really behind really fast with your patient encounters. Like one time I was 2 weeks behind, and it was like over 100 and some encounters, because I'm seeing like 15 patients a day. So try to keep up with that. As far as, everything else, just really, this is for a lot of you, your last opportunity to kind of have this experience of working underneath of somebody before you get your license. There's a lot to be learned. You can learn a lot of what to do and what not to do. So just try your best to go in there with a positive attitude. Be nice to the staff wherever you are, because the staff can make your life a living heck if you're not nice to them. And just go in there with an open attitude. There will be a lot of practitioners that don't do things the way that we learn them, and you're just going to have to hear their side and kind of decide what you think. Thanks for listening, y'all. Good luck.